So we're here today with Fred Dimit. He was a bombardier in the B-29s, and he served in the 20th Air Force, the 482nd Squadron of the 505th Bomb Group, and he was served on Tinian during World War II. I'll just start by asking you, where were you when you heard about Pearl Harbor, and how did you get involved in the military?
I was in the nurse's office in my college, Washington Jefferson College in Washington, Pennsylvania, when I heard about Pearl Harbor. And I was in my junior year still, and so it was quite a shock to me, but made me do a lot of thinking, and when the opportunity came along, I decided that the future was in the air, and so I enlisted in the Air Force. Mm-hmm. While I was in college, and I got a deferment to complete my college by attending summer school. Instead of getting out in June of '43, I got out in December of '42. So I completed and got my Bachelor of Arts degree at Washington Jefferson College in Washington, Pennsylvania. And went home in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and took a job with my father at Phillips Petroleum Company for make me get up during the day. And served there for about 6 or 7 weeks before I was called to active duty. Around my birthday in the middle of February. And I reported back to my college to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then I was put on a train and taken to Miami, Florida. That was my first base. So I took my basic 30-day training in Miami, which was quite a change from living in the Midwest and Pennsylvania for college. And then I went to from there, I was basic training. I was sent to a college training detachment in Beloit, Wisconsin, at Beloit College, and spent several weeks up there before I was put into pre-flight training, and where I was just qualified for a bombardier's position. And I then took my training in California, and general bombing, and then I was assigned to Harvard Air Force Base and to my B-29 group, and got my, so to speak, combat training of flying missions up there. Not that we dropped any bombs, but that we assimilated such a tactic and got used to flying in the B-29 airplane, which I was privileged to serve in because it was the only pressurized plane in the Air Force during World War II, so that I go loose hat and take my grommet out so I could put earphones over it. And of course I didn't wear it often while on duty in the plane, but that was a typical Air Force operation, was to show off our difference from the regular Army. And so as I say, I took my combat training at Harvard Air Force Base in Harvard, Nebraska, and I had an unusual experience on my way overseas in that I left from Southern California, I forget which particular base, and flew to Hawaii, and then on Christmas Day we decided we didn't really want to go to Kwajalein, or my pilot did. So we got to go swimming on Waikiki Beach on Christmas Day of 1944.
It's a nice
so
treat.
That was kind of a highlight of my service. I kid about that, but we did go on to Kwajalein the next day, and then on to Tinian, where I served my combat time. And I had some highlights there in that I flew 27 missions of various kinds, and brought about 2 or 3 unusual circumstances, I would say, in that I had a brother in the Navy, and I got a letter from him after we'd been there over in Tinian for several months, and found out he was on Guam, 125 miles south of Tinian. And so I brought it to the attention of my officer, my commanding officers and everything, and they gave me a 3-day pass. And I'd received this letter for just 3 days' time, and so I got this 3-day pass, and I caught my brother on his ship in Guam.
Wow.
So I got to spend a couple of nights there with him, and then came back and went back on duty. And then a few weeks later, he got to visit with me, and he got to fly on my B-29 with me. We had this air-sea rescue mission. We went out looking for downed airplanes. And so he got to fly on my B-29, and I had slept on his minesweeper. And the other odd circumstances about that connection was that he completed his tour of duty during the war, but part of my duties was laying mines in the Sea of Japan, in the northwest corner of it. And after the war, he was called back to active duty over there to help sweep those mines that my squadron had laid, you see. So, but he survived that duty in fine shape, and we had a fine relationship for the rest of our lives, or while he was still alive. And he had a distinguished career in the Navy as well. And I would say that probably the 2 highlights of my service there was that I had 2 different crews, because my original crew ran out of fuel one day, and we had to ditch and land in the sea I forget the number of the mission, but we lost 5 men from the crew in that crash, including the chief engineer, flight engineer that I followed out of the plane to get on the raft. And he went out a little early, I think, while the plane was still moving, and we found him unconscious in the sea and passed away. But then we lost, the tail end got knocked off, and we lost 3 out of 4 men back there. So it was a tragic occurrence to have that particular mission.
How many crew did a B-29 hold?
I think there were 11 of us all told. Pilot, co-pilot, bombardier, navigator, flight engineer, and radar operator, 2 side gunners, and a tail gunner. And is that it?
That's 9, I think.
9. Well,
that's okay.
yeah, maybe. Okay. I thought I named them all, but maybe I didn't.
So as far as, like you said, you flew about 27 missions. What was a typical mission? I mean, what was a typical target?
Well, we had the variety. As I say, a series of them were laying the mines in the Sea of Japan in the northwest corridor. And we probably did that 5 or 6 missions. The others we did have. Our first mission was to bomb the airfield at Iwo Jima. Prior to our taking, the forces taking Iwo Jima and occupying it and making it a haven for us on the way home. And I was the lead bombardier on it, and I claim I got within 50 feet of the runway that I was bombing, the airfield on Iwo Jima. So we had high altitude precision bombing like that, but then we had to drop into mines, and then probably the most precarious missions we had were the firebombs that we dropped. This was where there would be hundreds of airplanes to firebomb a particular city, and we went in at low altitudes with this particular type of bomb, just around 6,000 feet. And one time we had a slight delay in our takeoff because something wasn't quite right, so we were among the latter planes to drop this firebomb. And when we closed our bomb bay, well, we had some debris from the fire in the bomb bay, so we were a little concerned about that. But there were just charred remnants. There was turned out no danger from these particular deals, but it was quite an experience to realize after the turmoil and the churning that we'd gone through on that mission because of the heat waves, and then to find out that we had part of the fire with us. But we were told those were very successful missions, that we destroyed a lot of the Japanese cities and the will to fight. Then I guess the unique and different highlight of my career on Tinian Island was that the Enola Gay and its likewise squadron that had charge of the atomic bomb came and used part of our field on northern Tinian. And the navigator that brought it over there, when the original crew assigned to that particular plane, was an acquaintance of my navigators. And we ran into each other, and the Enola Gay and the other members of its squadron were in a restricted area. But this navigator, being a crew member, was able to take us, so that I got inside the Enola Gay before it flew the atomic mission. So of course, I wasn't on that mission, but the fact that I had seen the Enola Gay and been inside it was quite a highlight of my career, because the Enola Gay B-29 was quite different from the standard B-29.
In what way?
Well, there were several ways. It only had one bomb bay. The Enola Gay had one bomb bay rather than two, as we had. It had no nose guns or side guns. It just had tail guns. This enabled it to fly higher and faster than our regular B-29 because of a lighter airplane, you might say. Mm-hmm. And so it was unique and from us, and then I've followed up that experience and seen the Enola Gay in the Air and Space Museum in Washington. I've got within 100 feet of it again. But of course, this is a symbol of victory for the Japanese war. Mm-hmm. No doubt about it. It cost it. And the Boxcar was the name of the other one. Mm-hmm. And so those are the highlights of my experience on Tinian Island. Mm-hmm. And my experience in the war. And so I'm proud of the service that I've rendered, and wish that everything was safe and lacking the concern here. And I'm sorry that we're in Iraq, but it's not no comparison to it in the Great World War II whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So I regret that there is that going on in the world, but we've got to keep ourselves safe and away from the dangers of the atomic war. Mm-hmm.
when were you discharged then? When did you get out of the military?
Well, I got out in October of '45.
Okay.
And the war ended in August, and but I stayed over there until my proper turn came about. See,
now did Boxcar take off from Saipan, or was it Tinian also?
It came on. It was on Tinian as well, is my understanding.
Okay. But you didn't actually get to see that, or were you around when that?
Well, I was there when it flew division, and I'll say the other highlight. Its target was Nagasaki, and my last mission took us over Nagasaki, so that I saw the bare, burned earth. That was all that was left of Nagasaki, and the atomic bomb is so much more powerful and so much more devastating than anything else we've done or could do. That it's something we've got to avoid, and all future happenings with this deal to explode an atomic bomb.
If you don't mind, I have some questions I want to ask you.
That'd be fine.
So you flew 27 missions. Was probably your most harrowing mission when you ditched at sea?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The ditching was caused by the change in the weather. Really, we had a strategic bombing mission, and we had a tailwind going up, so we got close to the target and flew around using fuel prior to gathering into the bombing squadrons and flying over the target. And so then coming home, we ran into wind change, and we had a headwind, so we didn't have enough fuel. I think we got within 200 miles of Tinian before we ditched, and we were picked up in a matter of hours because we had air sea rescue ships up and down the corridor for us, and of course it was a very, very terrible experience, and losing my crewmates was a real tragedy.
Do you know about when that was during the war? Was like what? Do you know about what month it was?
May, I'm going to say. I think it was about
May of 45.
May of 45, yeah.
Okay.
I'd flown the majority of my 27 missions with that original crew, and then I was assigned to another crew and separated from my other crewmates, and to complete my missions.
When you were on a mission as bombardier, what were the main duties that you had in a B-29?
Well, I was being chauffeured. No, of course I had the unique position in that I sat in the very nose of the plane, and I had windows and surrounding me, see, and of course for the bomb window in front of me here in the bomb site. But I also had guns. I could fire guns from the upper front turrets, and and I did that once or twice. See, when we did have some attacking planes, but I kidded about being chauffeured by the two pilots who were on either side and back of me, and I was down lower in a seat lower than theirs and looking over the bomb site. See.
So did you have 50 caliber machine guns that you had for your
Yes,
guns?
we had. Well, I had a gun sight, see, that would then fire the two guns. Here's the bombardier, the two pilots, the flight engineer, and the navigator, the flight engineer. No, wait a minute. Bombardier, two pilots, the flight engineer behind the co-pilot, the navigator behind the pilot, And then we also had a radio operator.
Mm-hmm.
See, so there was 6 of us in the front. And then a radar operator and 4 gunners in the back. See, the way I remember it now. And so there was a spacious cabin up there, you might say, from my position as a bombardier and the pilots and the other crew members in the front. We had our own hatchway, which I was sitting on when we ditched. That opened up and let the water into the plane. We all had escape routes that we were trained to take out of that. And I was to say, I followed the flight engineer out his side and then found him dead and unconscious.
So you waited until you actually got in, until the plane was in the water before you jumped out. You didn't bail out before.
Yeah, see, and we entered this compartment through a hatch underneath where I was sitting, beside the flight engineer. See, there was this hatch, and that burst open and washed me up a little bit until I could get out the window behind the flight engineer. See, and I think that, and of course the nose was going into the water when he went out, and I think we were still moving forward, and I think he got forced into the propeller. It's my analysis of what happened to him. See, he wasn't chopped up, but he had a bruise on his head. And then we got him into the raft, and we got in. There were 2 rafts that we got into, and so we did. And we waited to be picked up by the air sea rescue ship. About 5.5, 6 hours later.
So when we were talking about the guns that you used to sight, I guess, did you look through a gun sight, and then the machine guns you had, did they train in? Was it basically computerized in a way?
The turrets were up above the bomb bays, behind the compartment I'm speaking of, where all of us were seated. See, so but of course they would shut off when sight went down. I was shooting underneath, but we had upper and lower guns. See, we could fire through.
Were you
we had gunners that operated those guns as well as I did. See, as far as that goes.
Were you still using a Norden bomb sight at that time, or was it a more
Norden
advanced?
bomb sight,
Really?
yes, that's right.
And you said at least on the Iwo Jima attack, you were the lead bombardier, the lead bomber on that one.
Yes.
What sort of accuracy do you think you guys could get with? I mean,
Well,
I guess it depends on the altitude, right?
Yes, that's right. And I brag. We had pictures of my particular lead. That was the only time I was the lead bombardier. A lot of times we were flying in formation, so we would just drop on the fire. See,
That was your first mission too.
Yes.
Wow.
That was my first mission too. See, yeah, it was flying over Iwo Jima, and we got pictures of it. How somehow I don't know how that was done, but some way they got pictures of where the bombs hit. See, and I brag it looked like 50 feet from the runway, and then of course I had a squadron of planes. We thought we took out that airfield, but we went up a few days later, and they still got. They had 2 airfields on Iwo Jima, as far as that goes. But
What sizes of bombs did you guys usually carry on the B-29?
up to 500 pounds. We had a 500-pound bomb, and that was the odd story about the atomic bomb. Was that here we come up with this new plane came over there, and all the differences and all the rumors about it. We had no briefing on it in any way, shape, or form, whether they were the new style B-29 and they were restricted area and super squadron. And the rumor was that the British had a 10,000-pound bomb. instead of our 500 pounders or stuff like that with the British. And that's what this new super plane B-29 was going to carry, that British bomb. We had no knowledge before anybody else that there was an atomic bomb until there was an explosion. And so the secrecy of that was very well maintained. Yeah, there was no knowledge of what they would be able to do and how what would happen until it happened. So, but my proximity to it was quite an experience. See, I say I've been telling people ever since that I've been in the Enola Gay.
Yeah.
Plane that ended the war as far as I'm concerned.
That's amazing.
Of course, the Black Car had an important mission too, and we all did. We all had very important missions.
I'm surprised that the B-29s that you flew in carried 500 pounders. I mean, there were larger bombs than that that the U.S. used. Weren't there 1,000-pound bombs and so on?
Possibly so. Yeah, yeah.
Or
but as I say, we dropped these fire bombs.
Oh, that's the difference.
Several of our missions as well, and then we dropped the mines in the North Sea of Japan. See, my brother had to come back and sweep later on. So we had different types of cargoes or bombs and things we did.
So I guess with the 500 pounders, you could carry a lot of them then.
Oh yes. See, and as I say, our brand of B-29 had two separate bomb bays. See, so I can't quote you the number of bombs we could load, but it varied with the type of bombs, of course. But there was a bunch of them in one B-29.
Because obviously the point is to start a bunch of fires, and the more bombs you have to do that, the more damage you can inflict.
Well, and when you talk about a 500-pound bomb, you're primarily talking about a detonation, an explosion, not setting a fire. But as I say, there were particular bombs to set fires. And when we went in at low altitude, they might have been on fire when they hit the ground. I don't know.
You mentioned that you guys laid mines from the plane.
Yes.
What was the procedure to do that?
Well, we flew in at low altitude, and the mines didn't explode when they hit the water. We just dropped them out in a certain area, see. And just like in a regular bombing mission, we got a certain stretch of water, direction and compass headings we went on and laid them out in a series so that we covered and there would be different squadrons in different areas of the North Sea of Japan, see. They would cover that area and tried to restrict their use going out that supposedly safe area of Japan and their shipping and getting their warships out and so forth.
Now were these mines anchored, or did they
float? I would say they floated, or yes, I would say they floated. Was my idea, because, as I say, my brother came over and swept them up some way. See, I don't know. I'm sure I think they were able to recover them rather than hit and make them explode. It wasn't. I don't know. I'm not. I never saw or asked him to explain it to me, but they talked about sweeping them. See? So I think that they picked them up to disarm them.
I see. Yeah.
See?
Did you ever get a chance to meet Paul Tibbets while you were there?
No.
I guess it wasn't a big deal at the time necessarily, but
no. And as I say, they had their own barracks area and so forth, and the runway or their parking area, their planes was semi-restricted. I say, with qualified personnel, you could get in there, but I couldn't have gone down there and say, "Hey, I'm Dimit from the 482nd. I want to see these planes." It was restricted in that way. So,
what did you do, like in your downtime, like whenever you weren't on a mission? what sort of things when you're on the island of Tinian, which was not that big of an island? Is that correct?
That's correct.
What was there to do?
Play poker. And unhappily, I've had an experience about that.
Yeah.
We had one guy named Lucky. And on another, we had two in our barracks, I was trying to think, had at least 2 crews of officers, maybe more than that. We'd have a barracks of probably 5 crews of officers would be in this one barracks. And Lucky, I forget his last name now. But anyway, I lost my paycheck one month. Had to write my wife for cigarette money. So I've been a little restricted since that time. I learned my lesson. I'm not that good a poker player. I don't
Lucky is.
Yeah, Lucky is.
How often did you keep in touch with your wife?
At least weekly letters and so forth. And I did have this one blessing about that, and that after the ditching, we got recovery time and went back to Hawaii. And I was able to talk to her on the telephone from Hawaii and tell her that I was safe and everything. And luckily, this was before it appeared that I was missing in the local paper.
Oh.
So that she knew that I was safe and so forth.
Wow.
So I was pleased with that.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, she had become acquainted with all my crew members and knew who was who and what. And I smile about this. This is my main high school sweetheart. We got separated from college and so forth and so on. But I started courting her pretty heavily while I was in the service. And we got married 6 weeks before I went overseas. Which was initiated by my parents, not her or me or others. I kept saying, hey, Mother, wait a minute. I'm going overseas here before long. We'd have to be separated. But it became acceptable to everybody concerned, her parents and her and me. And so I entered into a very wonderful, long-lasting 2 children relationship.
Good.
With her. So to say that she suffered the war with me, but I was able to tell her that I was safe from that one tragedy.
Mm-hmm. So did you have your kids after the war?
Oh, yes. We weren't married long enough to get that serious before I went overseas.
What was your impression of the other officers and some of the enlisted men?
Oh, all very favorable, I would say. I can't quote you all their names and everything, but Kerry Kilgore was my primary pilot, and but he was upgraded and became part of the staff before we went on the ditching mission. So the co-pilot Ed Kelly took over, and we got another new co-pilot for the crew for that mission, and others later. And then, of course, after the crew was busted up, why I went with another pilot. See, but Ed Kelly was my primary, co-pilot and primary pilot for 19 or so of my missions. And but to say, after that mission where our crew was separated, I still lived in the barracks with my navigator and Ed Kelly and the officers from the first crew. I did fly with this other group for the last 6 or 7 missions. But original crew was the one I went through training with and through the hardship and so forth.
When you were stationed on Tinian, obviously, the Marines invaded Tinian and took Tinian so that there could be a base there for you guys.
Oh yeah,
When you were there, did you see any of the remnants from the battle, from the Marine battle there?
Oh well, yeah, we could go down on the beach and see where had been shell holes and things like this and so forth, and then they brought natives around for ground maintenance and things like this. So we got to see some of them, but they weren't near our barracks or anything like that, or we weren't by their towns, but we did get to see a few of them, and they were taught a few English phrases, but mostly vulgar ones. So, but we had no real acquaintance with the Tinian natives, see. And we weren't free to run around the island either, as far as that goes. We stayed within our base limitations. There were two fields on Tinian. There's a north and south field. We were in the north field, our particular squadron. And speaking of Iwo Jima, though, I mentioned and talked about our passing over Iwo Jima and ditching later, but we also had one time when we had a little damage and a little worry, so we landed on, used Iwo Jima as a safety stop and refueling stop so that we could go on to Tinian one time. So that I did get to view Iwo Jima on that occasion. And so I picture Mount Suribachi and raising the flag and everything very wonderfully.
What's one of your more what was probably your most proudest moment or your most proudest mission, I guess, that you had? Was it probably your last one, maybe, or what would probably be your,
Well, say that my last mission was that we flew over Nagasaki and saw the utter devastation. There was nothing but bare earth down there. What we were told was the location of Nagasaki, and we had seen damage and saw fires like I could talk about going through those fire missions. Well, one time, getting the chars in our bomb bay, why those missions we were 2 hours of going over that target, and that many planes, see. So that, say the time we were going over there near the last, it was pretty hectic with the heat waves, see. And so. All the different missions were different things, and I talked about my being when I wasn't the lead bombardier, or we were being attacked coming home one time, see, and we were getting fired on, and I could see fire coming past our wings and so forth. And I hollered at the tail gunner. I said, "Shoot at that SOB."
Right.
And he said, "I can't see him." I said, "Well, fire anyway." And that stopped the fire. We no longer saw tracers going past us, see. So I clambered tail gunner, got one down.
Good. You said that you had a few planes that you shot at that came up to intercept you guys, right? A few Japanese planes.
Well, yeah, not very often. I relied primarily on the other gunners. They were in the actual turrets with the guns, and especially the rear, the tail gunner, and the side gunners on the back, and so forth.
So you never really had to fire at
no,
any of those planes? You're
I,
busy.
well, one time there were planes coming at us, and I took over the sights, and fired a few rounds. But, that wasn't a primary job of mine.
Right.
And then, say, a few times I remember being attacked while I was from the rear, see, except the one occasion.
Mm-hmm.
We flew into these guys.
Mm.
And so the B-29 was a very, very marvelous airplane and very advanced for World War II, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I was privileged to be there and not have to wear an oxygen mask all the time. That's fine.
Were they heated, or was it just pressurized? I mean, I know you didn't have to wear an oxygen mask, but did you have to wear with all the
we wear jackets like this. Why I put this on to simulate it.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it was still heated enough.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't all bundled up, absolutely like guys have to be in the cold weather down on the shores.
Mm-hmm. Now, the jacket and hat that you're wearing right now, you said the jacket's not a real bomber jacket. Is that correct?
No, it's not. It's a replica. This was a part of the uniform, but I had a cloth jacket that I primarily used when flying. See, this was a dress jacket.
How about your hat? What's the story?
Well,
of the hat?
this was a dress hat too. Of course, we wore a helmet rather than when flying. But we bragged about crushing the deal because we could wear this where we're earphones, and that's where the Air Force we didn't have to have a grommet and a real fancy hats. We could have these crushed hats. See. So I as a symbol of being an Air Force man. See.
But that's your original hat there, though?
Yes, it's
all
my
right.
original hat.
Good.
Yeah, it looks like it too.
It looks pretty new to me. It looks like it's in great shape.
Well, it didn't go. It's been around a little bit. See.
Well, looking back on,
Look here. That show up?
yeah, the Tenerife Dimit 482nd Bomb Squadron. Great. That's good. Real piece of history there.
That was with me at the time.
Well, looking back on your experience in World War II, was there anything that impacted you from that for the rest of your life? And was there anything that shaped your life that came out of your experiences in the military?
Well, yeah, I have had respect for military personnel ever since.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very much so. And so that I'm supporting AMVETS and Veterans of Foreign War, an organization like that, and so forth. And I have respect for those of us that served honorably, and which is a 99.999 hundredths of all the Americans. And I look on it with pride as far as that goes, what I've done, and I regret that there's the tragedy that was created for all of us, see, and we're still experiencing it today. But I'm a little skeptic about the Iraq War. It's not a war. It's a little police action, is what I would call it. See, that,
Compared to what you went through, that's
yeah,
definitely
see,
true.
People are very alarmed and upset about now over 3,000 deaths in 4 years. It's not a war. Is my reaction in that regard. It's a tragedy, but it's not a war. And I hope it doesn't develop into anything like World War II. Then it'd be a universal catastrophe, and that's what it would develop.
You know, looking back at the impact that World War II had on America's stance in the world, you know, being a superpower. You know, in 4 short years went from being essentially a third-rate military, you know, still using World War I machinery and rifles and so on and so forth, to being the foremost preeminent power in the world in just 4 years. A lot of things came out of World War II for the U.S. in terms of, like, you know, NASA came out of World War II, for instance. You know, and a lot of household appliances came out of World War II. I mean, are there any things you can think of that you realize are around today because of World War II? And if it, you know, hadn't been for World War II, a lot of the things we have wouldn't be here.
Oh, I hadn't looked at it in that way, but of course there was a lot of machinery development and skills nurtured, and experimental tactics made that have increased our capabilities, and so I'm proud of America and its position in the world, and it's we're certainly not a grabber or a conqueror in any shape of the word at all. In my opinion, we're protecting ourselves is what we're doing. We're not trying to rule and take over, because look at the Japanese are taking over our automotive industry. See, if we wanted to say, well, we beat you in the war, stay away or something, why, it would be different. But we haven't done that. We've encompassed the world and say, let's all grow together and be together. So
that's a good point.
I'm pleased to be an American.
Yeah.
In this regard.
Well, I don't have any further questions. Is there anything you want to add, you know, in closing or anything like that?
No, just God bless America.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for your service to our country. We all appreciate it.
Well, I'm proud of it.
All right.
I'm pleased to be a part of your program.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks.